I know we have a long night ahead of us of good education, so I'm going to stop talking and invite Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Andy Teasley up here. So give them a round of applause.
Hey, Goodwin.
Andy.
We're back, and it's only been a month.
Oh.
I just thought of something. Who's going to run the exchange in 2 weeks? Yeah, but you're going to be sleep deprived.
Do your job
Okay. This will be an interesting exchange. I'll have to see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, by the way, and he's talking about that we're going to be in Ohio attending a 4-day event ourselves. Pete Fortunato and other people that we know from a national speaking perspective are going to be up there. This will be my 10th year going out to Ohio. If you're interested in getting tickets, learning more about it, talk to some of the people who have already gone and who have already gone multiple times. Those of you who have gone to that event, would you raise your hands, please? So I know Ricardo, Evan, yep, lots of people. So see us about getting tickets and learning more about the event.
Yeah, excited about tonight.
Yes.
Who here has had trouble buying a rental house? Only 3 of you, okay. What's the biggest challenge for most starters on getting a house? Go ahead, belt it out. Yeah.
I think it's finding something that'll make sense with the payments that you come out on top.
You mean finding the money and making the money affordable to do the deal?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing you came tonight because that's what we're going to talk about this evening is getting money for deals. I don't know about Goodwin, you're institutionalized occasionally, right?
In what sense are you referring to?
You go to one of these big brick buildings and try to get money from them.
Oh, I've never gone to one of those.
Really?
At least not lately.
I was going to say, I haven't been to one of those since 2006. And I still have a liar loan.
Okay, jargon flag.
Really?
What's a liar loan?
Well, let's see. I was going through the small phone book of paperwork they give you when you're trying to get a home mortgage. And I got to the income sheet. And I looked at what it said I made that year. And I said, darn, I had a better year than I thought last year. And the note broker was a hoot. He slammed the book on my hand. Pen it all, you know. And I looked at him and he said, can you afford this loan? And I said, yeah, it's $300 a month less than I'm paying now. He said, shut up, sign where it says sign, initial where it says initial. There was nothing in that document that was accurate or factual with the exception of the address and the legal description of the house. Everything else was made up out of his mind. That was a very typical loan in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we had 2008. Which was why we had 2009 and 10, which made me smile a lot.
Yes.
Who was buying houses in 9 and 10? All you that didn't raise your hand, why not? They were free. I bought a 3-bedroom house in Southern California for $12,000. I didn't depreciate that house. You know why? I hadn't paid for the dirt, much less the house. What am I going to depreciate? You can't depreciate the land. Cool. Anyway, we're going to talk about money.
Mm-hmm.
The bank.
So who has too much money right now? Raise your hands.
Well, Todd and Steve.
All right, so we're going to have one of our sponsors, Steve Lazerson, come and speak to us.
We've changed their name. They're vendors now.
They're penders.
Vendors.
Vendors.
Vendors, yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're not sponsors. They give us lots of money, but they're still vendors.
Okay.
I have a question. Who here thinks money is the root of all evil? Who here thinks it's in the Bible? One in the back. Anyone else? Boy, you guys have got to work on your reading. What's the right quote?
The
The
love
of
of
money. Money's not evil. Money is a necessary tool to what we do. So having a friend like Steve in our group is very important to all of us here. And he's got a wonderful presentation, and he promises not to run too long. So please give it up for Steve, and come take his money before he takes the mic. Oh, we're looking for chairs. There's one right in the front here, dead center. We got two over there, one there. We got two in the front. You can look up people's nose. It's great. One right here. I'm not staying. I'm going to go back with my dad. Everybody else happy? Standing in the back?
Yep. 2 seats over here.
Two in the front. In the Presbyterian row.
So let me briefly introduce Steve a bit. So I've known Steve for a few years now. We've done at least one deal together where it was done creatively. We won't go into the details about that deal. Eventually, that's going to be one of our creative finance presentations. Steve, as someone who has money, both personal and from an institutional perspective, he's volunteered to go ahead and speak to everyone tonight. So let's have a big hand for Steve.
First of all, who didn't get a flyer yet? Okay. You just pass these around. Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? It looks like we got a great crowd. I hope you didn't all come to see me. You came for the meatballs and the salad. Anyway, for those of you that don't know who I am or don't know my background, I'm going to just briefly give you a little bio on me. So I've been in lending now for 43 years. I started out actually doing commercial and private money loans, and then I later branched into residential. And even before I was focused on the loans, I was actually in the car restoration business. I would restore antique and muscle cars. I had over 300 cars over time. I had a restoration shop. I learned how to paint. I bought a paint booth, and eventually, I did that for a few years, and I was kind of doing the private lending on the side. And then all of a sudden, I got really sick. I was having a lot of lung problems. I was literally off of work for a whole year. And the doctor said, the problem is what you're doing for a living. So back then, I was working on cars from the 60s and the 70s, and they produced a lot of hydrocarbons, a lot of smog. I got in from the car restoration. I branched over into the smog business. Any of you remember the Hamilton test system? Raise your hand. Okay, a couple of you. So what I did was I leased all these commercial properties next to where there was either a DMV or the Hamilton test systems, and we operated, these smog shops. But eventually, all the hydrocarbons, breathing them in, gave me problems, which some I still have today. So I said, well, the doctor said, you can't do this anymore. So I said, okay, I'm going to focus on the lending side of things. So that's what I did. And I was, when I was in the cars, I flipped a lot of cars like people now are flipping houses. So I did that for quite a while. And then I got into doing the commercial, and I started flipping commercial properties. So most people start with houses. I started flipping gas stations, and I was also flipping like little strip centers. Way back when they were, very inexpensive. So I would buy a little strip center for $275,000. I'd flip it for 360. Oh, I was so proud of myself. Now, I look back at those places, they're worth like millions of dollars. I say, why did I sell that? I should have taken, Andy's advice and kept everything, but, that's hindsight. So anyway, I did that for quite a while, got deeply involved in the lending business, and then all of a sudden in 2017, my life completely changed. So I'd been married for 33 years. My wife at the time, she was having an affair with her boss, and then she left me after 33 years of marriage. So, and then on top of that, I switched companies. The company I was working for, the owner died, and so I was recruited by a different lender. I went to work for them, and then I had to find a place to live because my ex-wife wanted to keep the house. So thankfully, I had a nice mother-in-law, and she gave me a house for myself. So that helped. But from all the stress, from everything, switching jobs, work stress, and personal stress, I was having heart issues. So I had to go to the cardiologist. I went in there, and the cardiologist told me, guess what? You failed all your heart tests, you're having symptoms, and we need to perform surgery. If you don't do the surgery, you're going to die in 6 months. So that was like a really wake-up call and say, wow, I don't feel great, but I don't feel like I'm going to be dead tomorrow. So anyway, I told him, it's my birthday next week. I want to at least enjoy my birthday. So he says, okay, but as soon as your birthday's over, you got to come in and we got to do this. So, I had like maybe 10 days to think about this. So then I went in, I had the surgery, and when I had the surgery, I'm awake during the whole surgery. They don't want to put you under. So they're running all these lines through me. It's like a roto-rooter thing. They're cleaning out all your arteries and things like that, because literally 90% of one side of my body was completely plugged up, and that was causing the problems. So they did the roto-rooter job. They installed 5 stents in me, and then it was amazing because I felt so good after the surgery. And when you do that kind of surgery, before they'll release you from the hospital, they have all these different people check you out, make sure you're not going to kill yourself, or make sure you can walk, you're mentally good, but physically you're okay, you feel okay. And so I had this surgery on Saturday, and then on Sunday was like a little recuperation day. And then everybody came in, checked me out, would sign off. Okay, you're not going to kill yourself, and you're not going to jump off a cliff or anything like that. So you're good. And then the doctor, came in later, and he said, "Well, how do you feel?" I feel great. I mean, I haven't felt this good in probably 20 years. And so I got up. I'm running up and down the hospital stairwell just to prove that I was okay. And, he looks at me, and I said, "Look, can I please leave now?" And he's looking at me, "All right." So he signed me out. I walked out of the hospital door, and I never take pain medication, but the one time I did, I walked out of the hospital door, and what they just give you something to numb you up and things like that. But then all of a sudden it was weared off. Oh my God, it felt, terrible. So I went home, I took a couple of Tylenol, and then the next morning I slept in for a couple hours, and then I went back to work, because that's all I knew. So, but I felt a lot better, but I kind of redid my whole life because at that point, and the doctor says, hey, stress can kill you. It wasn't from anything else. I was always eating healthy, exercising, and it was just from the stress. So after that, I had to stop eating certain foods, even though I always ate good. But then I had to exercise more, get more rest, and just do less stressful things. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because I had rental property, and like everybody else, sometimes you have some bad tenants. So in 2017, I decided, you know what? I didn't want to deal with my ex-wife over the properties we own. So it was a time I liquidated everything. And I took the money and I invested it in private money notes. Now, who here does not know what a private money note is? Everybody knows. Oh, okay, one person in the back, cool. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna talk about a little bit tonight. For those of you, it's a great way to create an income stream for yourself. And now some people love to do just owning the real estate, but you can do that in conjunction with the private money notes and really have a nice additional cash flow. So let's get into it. Okay, so what are the requirements to invest in private money notes? So you either need to be a qualified investor, or you can invest up to 10% of your net worth in an individual loan. So now I'm not talking about accredited investors. Does anybody know the difference between an accredited investor and a qualified investor? Okay, so the difference is an accredited investor has to have a net worth of $1 million outside of their primary residence, or earn at least $250,000 in a single year. Now, not everybody has that, so if you're a qualified investor and you want to invest in a note, you can do that, but you can't invest more than 10% of your net worth in a single note. So let's say there's a note for sale, or let's say you're going to sell one of your properties and you're willing to carry back paper and you're going to create your own private money note. So if you carry a note for $50,000, then that can't be more than 10% of your net worth. So if you had a net worth of $50,000, that would be your limit. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so why invest in private money notes? Private money notes, they can add diversity to investors' portfolio. Some people, it's good, they have rental property, maybe they have like gold, silver, stocks, bonds, whatever, but the notes are a very good asset, they're tradable, and if you set it up right in a corporation, LLC, you can even defer taxes with the money that you make on the private money notes. So private money notes, they can be very liquid in terms of people will buy the note from you. If you have a good note and it's got good collateral behind it, and especially if the note's not, a long term. Generally, we do notes from 1 to 5 years. If you're doing notes for, say, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, those are not going to be as easy to sell because sometimes people say, hey, I want to have the money to use for another purpose in the future. So the shorter notes, can be a lot better. And again, private money can have tax advantages, such as putting the note in an S corp or an LLC, and the short-term returns can be very good. My average on private money notes is about 10% overall. Have some higher, some lower. So that's not a bad return when it's steady across the board. If you have good collateral, people are always paying on time, and it's not a lot of work. You're just cashing checks. So that's why, even if you want to own rental property, you may want to do some private note investing. And then with private money notes, you're not responsible for the tenants occupying the property, maintenance of the property, or paying any of the expenses. So that's a good thing, because sometimes, with tenants, evictions, things like that, it can be somewhat of a headache. With the note, it's just, cashing checks, and that's it. So what to look for when investing in private money notes and some possible pitfalls. First thing to consider is the equity in the property. Is this going to be a purchase note where the borrower is putting down money in the property to show that they have skin in the game? Sometimes people will do a note and they'll give 100% financing. Okay, what happens if we're in a market downturn and all of a sudden, the property that was worth 400 is now worth 300, and you lent money to somebody on a flip, and now they're $100,000, underwater? Is that still a good note? Probably not, because now you don't really have the collateral. If the borrower decides to cut and run, it says, hey, there's no equity in the property, I've lost interest, he just lets it go. Now you got to take it back in foreclosure, and now you got to try and resell a property, without any equity. So in a cash out refinance where the borrower is pulling most or all of his equity out of the property, thereby leaving the investor at risk should the borrower walk away from the property at some point in the future. And if it's a second or a third mortgage, if it's a subordinate lien, meaning not in first position, and the loan goes into default, remember that a subordinate lien holder will have to keep up the first mortgage current. Should the first mortgage lender wish to foreclose after the lien, it has priority over your lien. So that's really important to know. You may get a higher yield on a subordinate lien, but you got to always remember, if there's something goes wrong on that lien and they stop paying the first mortgage, guess who's going to be responsible for it if you want to protect yourself? You. So let's say they had a $500,000 first mortgage, and you make them a second for, say, $25,000. Is it going to make sense financially for you to keep that second going and keep the first going? Probably not, because the payments on the first are going to be outrageous to just protect your small second. So a lot of times if that happens, people are generally, going to walk away from their small subordinate lien. And charging also usury rates. If you are an unlicensed individual and you're charging more than approximately 10% right now, and the borrower wants to take you to court, then you can be convicted of usury because you're charging more than what is allowable by law. So, you have to be careful. One of the ways around that is if you invest with a licensed broker, licensed lender, and they manage the note for you, they created the note, goes through their license, then you could charge, basically whatever you want, so you will avoid any problems with usury. Now, let's talk a little bit about investing in owner-occupied notes. Owner-occupied properties are covered under Dodd-Frank, which gives the primary homeowner a wide list of protections under the laws. So, first of all, you can't have a balloon note under Dodd-Frank, so owner-occupied notes need to be fully amortized. You can also not charge prepayment penalties under Dodd-Frank. So if you are going to do any loans and the owner's living there, you got to be aware that by law, you know, it's got to be a fully amortized loan. I mean, if you want to do a 10-year loan, fully amortized, you can do that, but then the payments are going to be very high. And how many of you go to exchangers on a regular basis? Okay, well, quite a few of you. So if you're going to exchangers and you'll see a list of the notes on the board, a lot of them will have short terms. People will want to, you know, borrow from 6 months to maybe 5 years, I would say. Question?
Does everyone know what a balloon note versus amortized is? There's some new people in the room.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Does everybody know what a balloon note is? Okay. A balloon note is basically a note that will have a maturity less than what the amortization is. So if you had a loan that's amortized over 30, but the borrower, we got another question here.
You're answering a jargon question with more jargon.
Okay, I'm going to let the expert here give his feedback on that.
All right, an amortizing loan. First, we remember the root word of amortize, which is morta, which is death in something, Latin, I think. Anyway, so an amortizing loan is one that gets killed at the end. It goes to a zero balance, and it typically has even payments from start to end. That's an amortizing loan. A balloon note does never get to zero. Sometime before it gets there, the whole remaining lump is due. Hence the term balloon. And balloons are for circuses.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Teasley. Now, again, getting back to prepayment penalties. So basically, a prepayment penalty, if somebody pays you off early, you want to charge a special extra fee for getting paid off early. And again, that's not allowed with any owner-occupied loans. So you gotta be aware of that and know the difference. So we want to stick basically with what we call, business purpose loans. There was an Assembly Bill 3108, which recently came out. And this bill says that you can actually be charged with a felony should any lender or investor make a loan to a borrower of an owner-occupied residence and claim that the loan was for business purposes only to avoid Dodd-Frank when the loan really was for personal use. So what really is a business purpose loan? Anybody want to comment on that? You said
Advertising.
no.
Capital improvements
On what, though?
on the facility or equipment. Income property.
Okay, you're much closer. So basically, he said income property. So if you're doing a loan on income property, that's half the battle. But the other part of it is the money that they use, even if it's for income property. Let's say they took a small portion of the money and fixed up the income property, but then they have the rest of the money and they pay off their personal car, they pay off a bunch of credit cards, they pay for their college tuition for their kids. That's a personal use. So even though it could be a rental property, but if they use more than 50% of the money for personal use, that's no longer considered a business purpose loan, even if it's on a rental property. Yes, sir.
How do you control that? So let's say, you're going to loan me $100,000, and I'm going to use 50 for